All right, welcome back, everyone. This is episode 8 of Grow the Grow Room at Grow the High. I'm with Ethan and TJ. How you guys doing?
Hello, hello.
Hey, doing good.
So obviously, we talked in the last episode about how we're moving initiatives and getting boots on the ground, and we met up with Ethan, and Ethan's a man who's also running a podcast of his own, and we'll do a little plug at the end of this because we want to definitely direct some users towards you. But today we're talking about some of the things we know are problems in the industry, some things we've heard. I know a lot of users have a lot of complaints, and we're just gonna air them out. So how y'all doing?
I'm doing well, doing well.
Doing
Yes,
pretty
we
good.
You guys have
do.
any personal complaints in the cannabis area?
You want me to
Uh,
start off?
yeah, go ahead.
Go for it.
So I felt like one of the goals of legal cannabis was to put out and extinguish the black market. We all know that hasn't happened. Prices are too high for that to be the reality. And the really messed up part to me is that weed always seemed like a working class drug to me. It's cheap, gives you base comfort, whatever. And those people, the working class, have just been priced out of the dispensary system. They like essentially gentrified weed,
That's true. I feel that.
you know?
Mhm. Yeah, they definitely part of it is like I feel like New Jersey got like really greedy in a lot of areas with weed on the business, and it's really like hurting the customers. They have tons of taxes at like every part of the industry, which by the time it gets to the dispensary, that's like tertiary uh in the line. So like prices are gonna be crazy. I do hear a lot about like cultivators are like basically breaking even right now because of all the taxes.
Yeah, actually, so I was looking this up today. There was literally in October, there was another vote, October-ish, for a deadline that was going to happen in November. So they held that shit late. But basically, there's a fee for cultivators where up until now it was, or it still is, because the deadline is pushed back. But the fee is $1.52 per ounce, right? Not that much, but they wanted to push it to 30. And by they, I mean, we'll get into that. But basically, that would mean if it's $1,000 per pound, and divided by 16, that's about $62 an ounce that a cultivator would be selling it at. These guys wanted to take 30 of those dollars, and that's ridiculous. Like they wanted to push that onto
Yeah,
the
it's like
cultivators,
half.
and obviously that met a lot of pushback, which is why the deadline was pushed back to begin with on this increase. But they literally wanted to add this, and it was almost secret. Like these guys just kind of like held this vote and like tried to push this through. If there wasn't any
But
pushback,
that was by design. Yeah, that
yeah.
was by design. They knew how bullshit it was. They're not going to advertise that.
Now, you want to know the crazy reason why they basically pushed it to 30? So
Why?
they had this fee of $1.52, a dollar something for like 2 years, 3 years, or however long they've been up. And the amount of money they accumulated, they looked at it and they said, wait a minute, we had all these plans to do things, but we can't do anything. It's not enough money. And so they just jumped to the maximum that was the limit, which is 30. And they're like, we need this. And then they got a bunch of support from basically people who wanted to use the money for like social equity stuff. And the reasoning they gave is like, look, it's fine if these people have to pay a little bit more. It's the cost of doing the good. And and this is crazy because these guys are quoted saying that. And
That,
yeah,
that's pretty crazy. You know what's crazy? Like, didn't we just go through this like whole thing with like normal farmers for like food crops.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Right? And this is like literally the exact same situation, right? It's like making it unlivable for the farmers
I mean,
and kind of just,
farmers, yeah, farmers getting priced out of things like just nitrogen and fertilizer is crazy.
Yeah.
yeah. It,
Honestly,
Who
um,
would want to engage with this system if that goes through? What cultivators want to do that? What end user is going to want to pay that premium that's going to get passed on to them?
yeah.
You're just going to kill the dispensary system that's already, I wouldn't say on life support because people are using it, but it's not what they have in like California.
oh,
It's a completely different animal.
What's
oh,
what's
100%.
what's crazy is when
And
I'm
you guys,
reading about this.
I was listening.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say I was listening to one of your earlier pods where you talked about scratch and sniff marijuana samples, so you
Tell
know
me
what
Yeah.
you
like the
like
smell of the
that.
marijuana you're getting.
Tell me you weren't against that.
And
Don't
it's a good
encourage
idea, but
this,
here's the
man.
thing. Here's that idea. That idea doesn't work in California because you can just put your nose up to a jar. You can't do that in New
That's
Jersey. It's a
hilarious.
very clinical,
Yeah,
sterile setup. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Which to some degree I like, but like I do think that like, you know, to have things all out, it's really weird that everything's all in the bag. You don't know what's going
Very
on.
true.
Um,
I mean, you
and
judge weed's quality by looking at it and smelling it, and it's a multi-step.
yeah,
It's not just some rating on an iPad that says, "Hey,
yeah,
85%
Damn
THC" or
straight.
whatever for a
where
cartridge.
where they have some stock image of it,
Oh my
not its
god.
current
Oh
On a
my
condition.
god.
jar or
What's
something.
crazy is
I,
those aren't the actual images of the
yeah, yeah,
product,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like
I'd imagine
99% I ain't trusting those.
it. It's unless it's like actually on the plant, I really can't trust it. And
Yeah.
even then, it's like it's too hard to tell. Um, uh,
So back to that issue, right? So like if so what we saw with farmers was that when they did this to farmers, farmers just stopped farming, right? They just stopped. They told their kids, "Listen, there's no farming left for you because you ain't gonna be able to do this and support yourself. Go off to college." And now their kids aren't farmers either, right? And now cultivators.
Yeah.
I mean, if not, honest to God, this could pass. I ain't saying this ain't gonna pass. This like the deadline's been pushed. There's a good chance that this gets put on his table again. And in his last, basically, he Murphy said like, listen, I'm starting to be a little bit of sympathetic because people have been advocating for this for me, and it kind of starts to make sense. And I'm just sitting here like, no, you're basically gonna what force out all the cultivators. Am I wrong in thinking he might just decimate the cultivators or the
see,
micro business cultivators?
oh, definitely. I mean, we saw up until this year, not many micro cultivators actually were in the system. I mean, a few got in, but one of my major beefs with Murphy is that, he ran on a platform claiming to be for small business, and he's really done the opposite. It to me, it seems like Murphy's trying to get specific people in place.
Oh, oh. Well,
Um,
that's a topic for
for
another day
another
one day.
time,
Yeah,
but um,
It's all fixed. If it can be fixed, it's fixed. You know what I
yeah,
yeah,
mean?
yeah, for sure. It's really weird
um,
because they so like Murphy he also like TJ you know about this they have this idea where there's this other line of cannabis products hemp products right
mm,
and there's some controversy on basically some stores gas stations whatever they might be somehow kids get access to this right
oh,
so
yeah,
there's a
mm,
problem guaranteed I see that however fundamentally banning say all of the hemp products or all the products that can be used this way. What I'm thinking here is like it seems like an overreach. I just don't know how much. You know what I'm
well,
saying?
so to me, it seems like Murphy wants to do what he did with, cannabis to that market because, even in like the address that he sent for the ban, um, the only reasoning they really gave was that gas stations were selling them to kids.
Yeah, but I don't know if
So
that's good enough
it
because
seems,
banning in
yeah, it
gas
seems like
stations
a weird thing to not be like, hey, let's start
or just
going after
require
gas
ID.
stations and instead punish every person involved in the industry.
I truly
Um,
Yeah,
believe
that's fishy.
Yeah, I truly believed it was a good alternative to the higher prices in these dispensaries, especially if they're saying, listen, the higher that type of marijuana, that's a choice. That type of cannabis, that's a choice. And then they take that away.
Yeah.
Yikes.
It's also like different strokes for different folks, kind of people. Like
True.
from what
Yeah.
I've read, it's like easier on the brain. So like people who get like paranoid on regular cannabis, they can get like pretty much the same effects without that side effect. Like a
Now,
lot of people really like it.
are you
I don't
saying
get the exposure to children argument because there are so many substances that are legal that kids are exposed to, like
exactly?
stealing
Yeah,
brandy from your dad's liquor cabinet. Just to focus on weed, you're demonizing weed because you think it's a bad thing inherently. That's where that really comes from.
And they're definitely like pushing this idea that it's like, I don't know if it's how publicly Murphy's doing it, but the people around him have basically said like, hey, this is a big win for the cannabis industry because they're basically increasing the sale of regular cannabis. They're bringing sales back. That's what they're not even. I don't think they're even acknowledging the minor argument. The people around him that are claiming victory. I think they're just straight up saying like, listen, bro, we just got more sales in cannabis now, which is like is I it could be, but I feel like if you're like me, you're looking at this new industry as a way to pay less, get more value, you know, different products. And now you're just banning it outright, putting us back to the expensive shit. And that leads to an uptick in the black market.
yeah.
Which
It,
was this was the whole point of this was to fight back on that. And it just isn't happening.
oh yeah, 100%.
I mean,
During
if you want like a cartridge, it's cool to go to a dispensary and buy a cartridge. But to buy flour, we all know it's unreal compared to what you can get on the black market.
I feel like they started and tried to lead with the black market, and then very soon they just stopped talking about it, and it became dead silence in the industry. I think they knew
Yeah.
fundamentally, no matter what next decision they make, it all just is poor. I think just poor management, but poor, and that just leads to the black market anyway.
yeah. It's kind of unfortunate, especially like in this day and age. Um, because like if you really wanted it incorporated in the system, right, you gotta make sure you follow through. And a lot of the plans seemed half baked recently. Um,
I mean, what do we know about the actual supply of cultivators and like the variety? I mean, so TJ, you mentioned this once that like
mm.
basically we should expect a lot of very similar plants. Like,
Oh, okay, yeah, I know
yeah,
what you're talking
yeah,
about.
go on, yeah.
So I don't know the exact framing of the um regulation, but
Mm.
essentially when and I'm assuming this is for dispensaries. One of my acquaintances that may appear on this podcast later was telling me one of the problems that they face as a dispensary is that they get they pick strains, right? And then they're stuck with those strains. Um, and then they did just up how many strains they could add, I was told. But like the reason, like I brought this up to Joey, a few months into legalization, that like everything started to taste the same and feel the same. And it turns out that there's some validity to that because they can only crossbreed between the plants they have. So they're gonna have all the same terpenes and same genetics, just kind of crisscrossed.
That's
Um,
crazy. That's crazy.
so yeah, which
That's
kind of
next
seems
level
like
crazy.
a very silly notion, especially when like there's so many strains out there. Um, I guess in one regard, it's like they get really good at growing that strain, but like biodiversity is what produces the extravagant results. Um,
And you get sick of certain strains. If you
uh,
buy
For
2 ounces
sure.
of something and you smoke just that, you get tired of it. You want something
100%.
fresh.
There's just this whole big issue with this, right? Like one, you're saying obviously the consumer is impacted because they don't got choice. There's very little, but what I'm thinking, one issue that I'm thinking, and I'm not sure how much other people think about this, but like when you're starting a business, like a micro business or getting into this, like we tried as well, and like this very particular regulation on you had this many strains that you can have, and maybe that increases later on. Not gonna lie, I didn't have that expectation. I didn't know about this, and I'm thinking like a lot of people going into this only then to find out that they're limited. Like there's a lot
Oh,
of it affects a business heavily, right? And
they,
especially on
there's
choice.
sorry, there's a little bit more to this regulation. Sorry,
Go
I
for it. Yeah.
escaped my mind. So along with what I already said, there is a oh God, what was it? So with this regulation, right? And this wasn't something we talked about. There, this actually kind of produces an environment where like it kind of dictates what the cultivators have to sell because they now have to like aim for the top named strains and they kind of have to keep growing that strain because if they can't take new strains, there's no point for the cultivator to switch up anything,
Yeah.
right?
And truly, if it's about demand, when say demand changes, it's and you might want to change, it might be hard to change.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be you're gonna have to
Like
like force
say
to like 180,
I
you
would
know?
even say it's a more obvious form of demand, a business decision. Say there's another dispensary that says, "Hey, we need these kind because we got a lot of demand for these kind." You just physically can't, even if you know there's more business there. Just putting a limit on the strains is almost barbaric. It's because you're basically saying
Yeah.
like, listen, we're gonna cap how strong you are as a business.
It also
And
makes
was
like
this
oh, what were you gonna say?
what was the reasoning behind them saying, "Oh, you can only have a certain amount of strains"? I don't understand why they put that limit on
Yeah,
them.
Yeah, me
It makes
neither.
no sense to me.
I think they
I
just
don't
want
know.
numbers. They're like, hey,
Um,
30 this many. I like putting a regulation here. It makes us look cool. Makes it look
yeah.
like we did some research. I don't know.
So like I said,
But it has such detrimental effects downstream to just be able to
oh
have a limit on your portfolio. It's ridiculous.
It's so yeah, very, very, very
yeah.
effect. Yeah, huge effect.
Like I said, I didn't get to go in depth on this regulation with them, but yeah, for and like I said, I don't know which parts of the industry this affects. I know for a fact that it affects the dispensary side. I don't know if the cultivators have the same restrictions, so maybe, like you said, Joey, they could still grow for other people.
Right.
Um,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
but at least on the dispensary side, they're kind of like stuck with their choices.
Wait. So you're saying the
Um,
dispensaries are the one that's limited?
yeah, at least as far as I know. Like I said,
Right.
I didn't get to
Okay.
go in
That's even
super
worse, I think.
detail, but Melody works for this dispensary that said
Okay.
they were to tell me, or they would tell me, their problems that they're facing.
Yeah.
Um,
You know what's fucked up? This is akin to them saying to a liquor store, "Hey, you can only carry 5 brands of tequila."
yeah,
Basically,
There's like no difference.
yeah. It's the exact. And if you're talking
Just
about
to illustrate how silly it is.
like an industry, your entire goal for an industry is actually to increase competition. And to decrease
Yeah.
competition, you're actually basically telling the industry, we actually don't want you to thrive. And that's scary.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
So now is the CRC is the one making a lot of these like
yeah,
decisions,
they're the only ones making
and
these
they're pretty
decisions. I'm pretty
small,
sure.
a small committee, right? Like they're not like more than
Oh
15
yeah,
people.
yeah, I'd say roughly around there, probably.
Yeah, that's a lot
Um,
of power for 15 people. It's a lot of power for that
yeah,
many
it's
people.
also like a lot of work for because like
Oh, for
I
sure.
don't know,
Yeah,
I don't know.
maybe you get
I
lost in
mean,
the sauce. And you just
yeah,
start like start making hot hefty decisions based off what people tell you. You got people in your ear saying like, "Hey, we need this. Advocate this."
yeah. It's
I hope
also
not.
yeah. I'd imagine to some degree it does. I mean, but I don't know how much that really impacts it. Though, as usual, usually the big players get their say. Right, they say something, and whether or not it goes through. it's usually heard by someone
Yeah.
of more influence.
So I mean,
Uh,
a lack of variety is one thing, but price increases just straight like that's just you're just directly telling us you don't want us to have good prices or you want us like if truly if they were saying the black market directive at all, I would think about it. But they really have stopped talking about it. And then to even consider pushing $30 onto the cultivators, who are basically getting nothing a wholesale selling price anyway. I mean, that's obvious to me. There's no hiding it at that point. And you know, is I'm trying to wonder, is this after our boy Jeff left? Is it since he
I
left?
think so. Um, R.I.P. Jeff. I hope you're doing
He's
great.
not that.
Yeah, I
Jeff's fine.
know. But yeah, I'll miss him.
For
Okay.
context, Ethan, Jeff is the guy who's I think heading the CRC.
Oh,
He's
he
he
was.
he was
He
yeah, and he
was.
stepped down.
He,
He's not dead.
yeah.
He's moving on to bigger and brighter things. Man's probably filthy rich, living on an island somewhere. Hopefully.
Um,
That's a good deal.
Yeah, hopefully
right.
he's done. He was the only voice of reason, and we looked forward to listening to the CRC meetings every time they came out, just for him, right?
Now,
Because
is that the Cannabis Regulatory Committee?
yeah,
Yeah.
the CRC, the Cannabis Regulatory Committee, yeah, they had their meetings, and we always tuned in,
Jeff was the
and
star.
we just basically we listened through all of it, but it was awful listening to them until Jeff spoke.
Yeah, Jeff.
Jeff, an angel. Jeff was able to talk sense. He was able to be clear, succinct. He no bullshit, right? And everyone else, I could not say the same. And now he's gone.
Now, is that committee full of people who know relatively little about cannabis?
It
I don't think so. I think eh,
I don't know.
they,
They haven't given any idea to how much they know about
yeah,
cannabis, but they have given an idea on they have basically their own roles as far as like what aspect they're trying to cover or what like mission they each have to like push. I don't know if I'm probably butchering their jobs, but like from the way it looked to me, like one guy's always pushing for like minority and social equity. He's like, I just want to remind you guys that we haven't spoken about this in a while and it's about minorities and this and this. And I'm just like, okay, so that's your job. Okay. And then so they each have this. I mean, that's how I see it, you know. Like, and I don't know if that's a great way to look at it, but I'm hoping they got more people. If it's just
yeah, I'm
them,
sure there's plenty of background characters that don't come to the meetings. The meetings probably just like the upper management.
but now
Um,
when they so this fee that they were trying to collect, this
mhm.
$30, which was originally smart, they had $1.20 and then they upped it to $1.50. Good for them. But this they then looked at the pot of money that they were collecting over the last few years. Even amazing, like how amazing the industry has gotten, they're like it's not enough money. It's not enough money to do shit. And so they're like, we gotta increase the money in the taxes. And I think what's crazy is even in the news and other places that I'm reading it, like they're very clearly saying that the fees are on the cultivator, but the price that they're using in conversation are the final retail prices. And so that's their justification on why $30 is fine. I can't find anywhere else where these guys are talking sense. It's like they're just trying to ignore that there's a wholesale price.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people really don't have like business backgrounds
It
because
can't.
like
It has to be more intentional than that. This feels like they're trying to
you
use
think
this. Yeah, I mean, so when cannabis came to the states, it was like a state by state effort, right? Like these guys had like this. I forget how they described it, but they had this like actual strategy to basically get it legalized in states, and it was basically everything from meeting lawmakers to writing them letters to it was a very strategic set of moves that they did to just do everything possible to get it legalized. Because first there was just a lot of pushback in places that like it was a lot of pushback, but it wasn't like the people's voice pushing back. And so they're like,
Mm.
if the people
Right.
want it, there's no way we don't get this shit passed. And so they got through to like the lawmakers, whether it's through letters or having them calls or pushing by physically meeting them, and all that stuff, and sitting down with them. But like when that happened, there was like, I don't know, there was an obvious push state by state to get these regulations passed. I don't know, what was I going with this? I lost my train of thought.
Um, you were talking about price onto the cultivators, and that it seems pretty intentional uh, with the
Yeah. I mean, so
hurt the market.
yeah, just that idea that like they look like they're trying to take whatever opportunity they can to pass this, and then once it's passed, it's almost like you got to work hard to unpass it. And the when they came into the industry, depending on how you look at it, their fundamental goal was, wait, just get it passed because it'll make you a lot of money. And now I'm looking at it like, okay, so now they're just capitalizing on this. So it's
Yeah.
to see it like come to fruition where you legalize it, and it's fine now. That's one thing. But then when the states basically take it as a way to make money and put it to the maximum, you kind of see immediately what their goal was.
You know,
I
I'm
mean,
I'm sure.
when
Oh, go on, Ethan.
no, you can go ahead.
So I was gonna say, I have you heard anything about any like pushback from the big players on this tax?
Do you think they
Because
care?
probably that's a ton of money that
You
they'll be
think that?
losing.
You think that? But you know what's more money? Being a monopoly.
That's valid.
Pushing out anyone who's smaller is it's almost a godsend for these guys. If you can basically
I think
prevent,
if they had their way, we'd be paying $100 for a fucking eighth.
I would think of it like if they allowed small businesses to be free market, then they would see small businesses outcompete even the big ones because
Yeah.
the flow would just be high.
That's valid. You do get very standardized the bigger you go. You can't be as flexible.
I don't think the big ones want the fight, and I think they're willing to go through the regulation to basically hammer down on the smaller businesses because they're not fighting back. This was a law against them. They're not fighting back at all. It was basically
And you
the
believe this
mm,
you believe that this price increase will be passed on directly to the consumer, right?
It,
it
well, so
has to be. Even so,
oh yeah,
Yeah.
all of the people who were around this when this happened pretty much acknowledged it. The people who were supporting it acknowledged it. The people who were against it acknowledged it. That it would come down to the consumer. And the fundamental point, like even they were given estimates like 10-15%. I think that's bullshit. I think it's a lot more. Like if you're talking on flour alone, the highest thing, the best thing that they can expect is around 10-15% increase. At worst, you're doubling the prices of stuff because most of the flour that's going to be sold at $10 or to like $30, you're already putting an incredible amount of like pressure on product that they're just going to increase the prices for those the most. 50% is like an expected amount. Any joint that goes from $10 to $15 is just an expected price increase, and I don't think they
They really
understand.
they're gentrifying weed.
Yeah, they are, and
That's what this is.
I don't know if it's like like the tactics is so dissimilar that people just don't see it, right? Like they just see, oh, dispensary, nice. They don't see like a mom and pop shop being bulldozed into Walmart.
No, it happens with everything. That's the way it goes in this country and in other countries. It's the little guy is just beaten to death by some larger monopoly who has all the invested interest in making that smaller guy fail. You
Yeah,
know, and it's the same with every industry, and it's playing out here with legal cannabis. You know,
So I know the route, the big like circle jug handle that they make you do to become a license holder. because we did try and go through it for a bit, and one of the things that really cut us off was everything from like property leasing to getting a loan. And truly, one of the crazy things is they kept saying for like, I don't want to give dates because that's where people will get me. I think it's like a year at least. They kept saying to and pushing for this cannabis training that they were going to release. They finally released it, right? I
Oh,
forget.
didn't they?
Yeah, no, they did, TJ. They finally released that stuff. But they released it so like just recently, like the last month, 2 months, whatever. But they released it so late, right? And the purpose of this training is basically to say, listen, if you're trying to become a license holder, you should go through this training. It's going to help you everything from do your application to getting municipality support, all the video training or online training to do all this stuff. And the thing is, they were like, applications have been open, but they didn't give any support, any help really in helping people even understand how their application is supposed to be dealt with. And then people basically would submit it, fail, it comes back because they don't know what they did wrong. And for micro businesses, that's almost unacceptable, right? Because not only are you paying for this, you're probably paying lawyer fees on the side during the time that you get your thing back and to find out it didn't pass. And lawyers aren't cheap. Lawyers are expensive, accountants are expensive. So like holding onto a property is expensive. Imagine you're holding onto a property, you send your application, it comes back failed. Right? Now you gotta hold the property even longer. And like that's yeah. And the point is like they just opened up this training thing, which is they were basically saying almost like you kinda have to do this. Not that you have to, you really, really should do this training if you want us to approve your application. And so I'm just like, okay, so you're saying we basically have to do it because this is the way. And now they open it up. Like it literally took them 2 years to open this shit up. That's how I look at it.
Yeah.
Like this was a
It's
very
kind of
significant, gateway.
it's kind of bizarre how many struggles we ended up facing trying to open up our own shop. Uh
It
like
felt
I
just
mean
like regulations on
everything from the
regulations.
government to like the actual people we were dealing with. I mean the few people
Oh my
who
god, the people. Oh
were
my god, TJ, the
cool with
pushback.
us using because like when you're a cannabis company, you have to explicitly like tell, and I think this goes for like any business, but you gotta tell the landlord, what you're doing. Um and a lot of them were not very keen on working with cultivators, and a lot of the ones that were keen on it always tried to raise the price like a drastic amount on like what rent would be.
And the moment they find out you're a micro business or like, certain other things, you don't get the kind of value that you so if
Yeah.
it was more
Oh yeah, there
standardized,
was.
I'll tell you this, a bigger company can roll in and depending on how you like walk in and work a deal out, you might be able to like get a micro business and set it up properly. But if you're one of the normies or you're just a regular guy setting up a business, so you're a small group, you have not much money for lawyers, accountants, and stuff. There's no way you're gonna weasel your way into a good deal with that landowner. Like you're just not getting good value. So basically, you're basically kicking out the micro businesses to people who are big companies who are just setting up a small micro business. It's basically just the same thing.
I wonder if that's something, because can you, with like other industries, can you decline, like it say like McDonald's wanted to buy a place, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does like a person have the option to be like, no, we don't want a burger place here?
Oh, yeah, of course.
I think if
Eh?
it's not a discrimination based on like race or anything like that, I think you can just have no reason at all to deny a lease.
Well, no, if you're an owner of the land, it's up to you
Mm,
who you lease it out to, right? That's hundred
Yeah.
percent up to you. Now,
yeah.
if you decided that McDonald's had some legitimate reason, even if it was like a terrible reason, like I'll be honest, I ain't gonna say it, but say they're just a certain race and you don't like them, so you're racist, right? Say that's it.
Mm,
Realistically, as long as you don't say that to them, you're fine. Because if you say it to them, they sue your ass.
yeah.
McDonald's ain't letting you go. On the CRC, I was actually thinking what they really remind me of is how the federal government's the SEC works, which is very similar in there. Basically, we're not going to communicate with the people directly. We're just going to let the people keep yelling at us, complaining at us, and then we're gonna kind of like listen, pick and choose, and every now and then we're gonna go after people. Like it's almost like, listen, our team is small, but we got a mission, and we're focused on just that. We can't really hear or see anything else.
Can you say that again?
I can.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, in short, like it feels like the current CRC,
Mm.
their mission is kind of like the most important thing to them, and it's like they're losing sight of a lot of the other things. And
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Okay, I see what you're saying now.
it's reminding me of how like a federal agency like the SEC works, where basically like they don't go out of their way to advise you on how to work well with them, right? So like imagine you're trying to set up a cannabis company. You need to get licensed, you need to get approved by them, approved by municipalities, all this other stuff. With
Mm.
the SEC, it's almost the same thing. If you want to set up an ETF or you want to set up an ETP or some other exchange product, you have to get licensed by them. And generally they just flat out deny you if you have one mistake on your application, and they won't tell you the reason why. Not really.
I think that's the same with the. Well, actually, I think they tell you what you did wrong with the CRC. At
Good.
least
Oh,
they've
do
made
they?
claims to.
Okay, I thought specifically they didn't tell you what you did wrong in
I
your application for the CRC.
um
I thought that was one of the that was one of the things that they said they
uh,
wouldn't do.
maybe.
Why wouldn't they want to open it up and allow as many people as possible to compete in the market? I mean, you want to generate more tax revenue. The way you do that is by increasing your tax base.
I think
It makes no
they're
sense to me why they would be so restrictive.
I think they're taking it very, very slow. In fact, maybe too slow to the point where it might stagnate and they might not get control of it back, or it might have to be some revolution to get it back. But it feels like they're just like, maybe we have time and it doesn't have to be right now that we go full speed, and let's just get all the infrastructure down, and what do we do with the money, and shit, we don't have enough
You know what my
money.
response is to that?
What?
That the people voted.
Damn
There
straight.
was a mandate a few years ago. We want legal marijuana, and it wasn't said in that mandate, but it goes along with it. It needs to be affordable to
Yeah,
the average person,
that's so
Yeah.
true.
which that hasn't happened yet.
Just this idea that we've legalized it, but now it's on the state to decide what's right. We had that kind of legislation has to be pushed forward now. We have to start defining, like, no, it can't just be like let the state decide. Here's what is a good idea. And I think yeah, I think the next big thing really for cannabis is like the sweeping push for that kind of legislation, because I can't imagine where, if you have this kind of control, where a state can say, imagine they just pass this shit, this $30 thing,
Mm.
cultivators would just have to deal with it. There's no, like, they couldn't.
Everyone would just have to deal with
No,
it.
no, I get that, I get that, but all like there's like 50, 100 cultivators, right? I would
Mm.
imagine all the micro businesses would basically be dead in the year,
Oh, almost guaranteed. They're breaking even now.
and they would find a way to quit sooner, save, cut losses, and then just try and live with the money, because it's not like they don't know that this is gonna happen, and these guys trying to do it. Like, it's almost like, wait a minute, guys, they pulled out a gun you know, and I'm like, whoa, they had a gun, you know, like you know having an argument with someone and it gets really bad, and like just as you start calming them down, apologizing, you realize they pulled out a gun and they were pointing at you and they're putting it back now. I'm like, wait, whoa, like you're gonna go that far?
Yeah,
It's kind of effed up.
it's really it's really crazy. Like, and I don't. Did they say why they picked this number?
It
Like,
was the
when
maximum.
it was the maximum, they were just like,
They just
yeah,
went to the max.
the max.
I think the
That's
Oh
vote
my
crazy.
God.
I think the vote failed by like one person.
By only one?
I think it was something like that. I'll look it up.
That's
But yeah,
kind of insane. How is it that close? That I feel like people just don't look down the road and see what's gonna happen.
if
Just
they
like that we legalized it and they're still making decisions about how we do it. Decisions
Yeah,
that hurt us. Yet
okay,
you
we
know.
voted
so
for it.
here's the
That's the
crazy part.
bullshit disconnect.
Yeah, yeah.
Wait,
I was gonna say
oh,
that's the
sorry,
bullshit disconnect.
Joey. Did they make any mention of like where the money that they were collecting was going?
Into just this
Because
fund that they're holding, and the purpose of the fund was for
mm-hmm,
social equity, justice, that kind of stuff. And the idea was to put different programs in place and fund it with this. So imagine like a community needed help, or there's
mm-hmm,
some community affected by drug crime, and they wanted to basically help. We'd set up a program, use this to fund it.
interesting.
Now here's what I just found out. Right, this is the
Mm.
crazy part. The board that voted has 5 people. That's it. 5 people are deciding this shit. So it was the vote was 3-2. One guy could have flipped that shit.
Hopefully they stay strong and
Well, the thing is, the vote was to delay it. Okay, so the deadline was November 1st. They were going to have to make that decision. And so they decided, actually, this is kind of negative the way I see it, because if the deadline was November 1st, if they missed the deadline, the price would stay the same. So
yeah.
they are definitely increasing it. The question is by how much? That's what it
That's
looks like. And that just means you're eating away at the cannabis industry entirely.
Yeah. It also feels kind of weird. Lesser known fact. So like one of my customers brought up an interesting topic, and which is why I asked where they were allocating the money. Um, did you know that all municipalities, benefit from the tax revenue, right? Even the ones declining weed and like banning it
Yeah.
outright in their areas. Um, and it made me just start thinking like two potential routes that may be like beneficial in a way. Like it feels weird that they get to benefit off of the tax revenue if they're outright banning it. Um, so like maybe the CRC wouldn't need as much money if they restricted the access to the municipalities involved. But along the same topic, opposed to that, maybe they do a revote and do it county based opposed to municipality based because that in itself also creates a lot of weird, borders that you have to fit in. Like that was one of our major problems when we were trying to find the places that we had to be in such specific locations
Yeah. Yeah.
that nothing was available. Nothing was available.
Yeah, truly. That was a big problem. The zoning requirements for cannabis is kind of interesting because sometimes it's just straight flat like, hey, here's a zone, here's a type of zone, and what we want. Other times it like anything online
They were like
under.
this specific square.
Yeah, no,
That's it. Which was crazy. I can't believe I actually
they had
saw
those.
that.
They had
They actually had them.
yeah,
Where
no,
they
it was
just cut
everything
out
as
of
like as simple as like or as small as like here's like this 1 block radius, pick one,
yeah,
or pick a building here, which is like
yeah.
there's no building available, or like they've already secured the buildings and it's just pre-made. Like they definitely had some hand in picking
Yeah.
an area that is already being used for something. But all the way to like if you were, if you're going to a website for a particular municipality, you'd either find absolutely nothing sometimes about what to do or what their regulation is, all the way to you'd find a bunch of stuff but nothing about their maps or their zoning or what's real or or what's listed. So like they basically, a lot of them are like so underprepared. Like I've said this for a while, the federal and state government, the technology they use, the websites, the front end, all this stuff, severely lacking. Like
Oh,
they're still on paper and pen. They're not they're not as digital as we need them to be, and they're definitely getting in our way.
yeah, it's kind of crazy how it's weird to think because like you always see in movies they're using like the top grade gear, the government, but in
you,
reality, like
you wish.
most governments are run pretty inefficiently. Like all the I remember one time, and I don't know how true this is, but this was when I was in I want to say like early college years. Someone told me that most of the like municipality websites were just made by like college kids.
I can see
Um,
it. I can see it.
but I don't
Oh
know
yeah.
the validity, but it does
It
kind of
it
track.
it feels like it's made by high school kids from my perspective.
Listen, Joey, not everyone can be a computer science genius like you. All right.
No, no, and well, anyway, the point is like when you're talking about like getting a municipality on board
Mhm.
with you, like actually, what's it? One cool thing, I don't know if it's a cool thing. They basically are trying to promote, and this is the maybe one aspect I think they're doing good. Maybe I don't even know if this is good, but basically they're trying to give some tax value to municipalities by encouraging them to allow cannabis in their municipality. Actually, this might be a negative. We'll see how. But basically, they're saying, listen, if your municipality allow cannabis industries, you'll get 2%, up to 2% of their sales in tax revenue to you. So you should definitely do it. And what now that I'm thinking about why it might not be that good of a thing is because they still have the ultimate control over who sets up a business. So basically, it's still just now. It's like, okay, now you can add an extra 2% tax. So like, I don't know if like originally I was thinking, hey, you're increasing cannabis business in a municipality. You're telling the municipality like, listen, you should want this. We're letting you tax an extra 2% now. You get 2%. But now it's more like shit. They can still pick the highest form of like the gentrified business, and then also just add 2% tax to them, which they just push onto the consumer. So it doesn't increase competition at all. Not really.
I
Now,
don't
are
know.
there would you s- would you say that there's legal cannabis models in this country that you would agree with that you say, oh, they're doing it well?
No.
No.
Um, I don't know. I feel
It's
like
such a
in
sad
most
question.
regards, there's things that I like that they do, and things that I don't like. I try not to,
Go on.
keep it as, just black and white. I hate it, I love it. But like there's certain things like New Jersey has a lot of weird rules. And there's also like a lot of like workarounds for it. Like I know so like there's a limit on how much you could buy, and it's different whether you're recreational or medical, right?
Right.
Um, but there's like loopholes around it where do you know like RSO oil, um, Rick Sampson oil, right?
Yeah.
It's a concentrate, but I believe the way it works is the way that it's like regulated. It's regulated as a concentrate opposed to an edible, even though it's mostly an kind of you eat it.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
so the amount of flour that goes into Rick Sampson oil is more. So like you can get I forget the numbers, but I think we'll say like a gram of edibles, right?
I
per
see
your
where we're going with
cycle,
this. Yeah, yeah.
right? But with the Rexamson oil, you can get the same amount of flower that would be used, but get more. So it's kind of a workaround in some
It is.
aspects.
It is.
There's also like because of the like milligrammage and like all the laws against like what edibles. Like I think we just started to be allowed to do brownies and stuff. Um, but like you really like funneled the market to be a certain way, um, and not really in like any fashion that uh benefits anyone realistically. So like, and another thing is like a lot of people who use it medically are like old, right? And they're not down with the tech a lot of times. So
Right.
like going through the whole process of getting, a medical license, as well as, like you're paying like a yearly fee to just have access to like a select amount of plants, which is weird conceptually. Because it's like if you're using it for medical, wouldn't you want it to be more like specified to your, needs, opposed to just like, hey,
Right.
this is a selection for them. I feel, and I don't know how other states handle the medical side, but at least from what I've seen, like there's not a lot of like information given to them. Like they're just like told to buy weed essentially and paying that extra
That seems
fee
very
of,
disorganized, and
yeah.
it seems like it does not have the end user in mind at
Um,
all.
like I know from like the people I know that work in the dispensary, they're starting to have classes on, cannabis, or at least available to their employees. They didn't say it was mandatory. Um, but it's also like I don't think I've ever seen, and I've been in dispensaries and I eavesdrop on everyone. But it never seems like they really have an answer to like what needs are being met with the cannabis. Like I've heard people, tell them what disease or disorder they got, and when they go for their recommendation, I've noticed it's usually just whatever has the highest THC potency, which isn't really, you know, beneficial in a way, like because like you're looking
Yeah.
for terpenes for like the medicinal effects. Um,
So even the medical process is flawed on dispensary level,
yeah,
basically.
yeah. So it's I haven't heard much complaints, though. I don't live in the other states. But I don't. Besides California, I heard California was going through something similar where like the cultivators weren't making profits anymore. I
Jeez,
don't know. I don't know how much of the market was affected. Um, but and I don't know if that's still because that's kind of dated when I heard that. I feel like I heard that about like a year ago. Um, but like it doesn't seem like the other states really have as many regulations as New Jersey. Like everyone else kind of kept it
that's what
pretty
I that's what I
simple.
felt. I just couldn't
Yeah.
confirm it because
Yeah.
obviously the laws, ordinances, codes. That's so much work to go through.
Yeah.
But truly, yeah, it felt so. Like for example, just on some level of like taxing or so, just to like even like obviously end consumer, they never really think too much about this. But even from their perspective, things are easier in other states, or it's slightly cheaper, or like there's more product, there's more competition, or there's more choice. You know, like
Yeah.
that
From
alone.
what I've seen with my I have a friend who lives in LA, and from what I've seen from him, it is radically cheaper. A lot of it's delivery based.
Dear
There's
God,
no limit on edible dosages. I mean, there might be a
my
limit, but
God,
you get a pretty sizable edible, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
I
I've
want to
seen
see
other places
that.
have like 500 milligrams, 1,000
Right.
milligrams. So like
And
it,
this brings us back full circle to how the government is honest to God. They're basically pushing people to the black market at least for choice. if not for more quantity,
Yeah.
but at least for choice and price. And if
The
their
the only
goal,
thing
yeah,
I was gonna say, the only thing that they have on the black market is the availability of good cartridges and shit like that. I mean, that stuff's hard to find
yeah,
on the black
yeah,
market at a good price, at least. That's the only
clean
thing
stuff, yeah.
the recreational right. That's the only thing the recreational system has above the black market. But otherwise, when it comes to flower, right, we've already talked about this, but there's no comparison.
It's
You know, that's
also like if you trust the people that you've been getting from the black market anyway, you're basically saying, okay, go to the people you trust, and as long as you're not finding new places, because a lot of the industry today, like they have these fears, everything from the cart scares. I don't know if you remember those, but like I don't know, kids were
uh,
dropping like flies or something like they're like ending up in
Was that the
hospitals.
vitamin E stuff that they were putting vitamin E
yeah,
I
into
something
heard
like that.
counterfeit
Yeah,
cartridges?
I heard it was those pesticides that were when they were burned, they basically ended up turning like those pesticides specifically turn into cyanide when burned at high temperatures. I heard it was that.
interesting.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
and so not that that came from the good ones, that came from the bad ones, but it was because of like basically how these home growers and dealers would grow weed on their own and then just make it into the concentrate and put it in these carts and give it to people. And it's like, okay, so is that really it? I don't know, but like if that is, you just got a bunch of dealers killing kids, and if that's the case, there's this whole market that we're now pushing in legalization. Great, and now you're pushing them back to the black market, and it's like, wait a minute, I think you've shot and you missed. You missed the point.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
interesting
definitely.
you brought up the carts because I do notice, at least around us, a lot of people do prefer the carts, like when they go to dispensaries. Um, and that might be an interesting reason to why. I never understood. I always thought it was. I mean, it probably still is largely, like a convenience thing.
Discretion, definitely.
Yeah,
How
discretion.
small it is, convenient. Yeah,
Um,
100%. But I'd also
but
say quantity and.
yeah. But it also interesting to think, the potential impact that, that has on their choice of what they buy from where. Because if they're still going to their street vendor for flour, but, their street vendor can't get carts, they still go to
Damn straight.
dispensary.
I would even argue
And
that
the price on the cart seems appropriate because you can't get them on the black market easily.
exactly,
So even if the carts are a little
exactly.
expensive, you're still gonna pay
Yeah.
it because the accessibility is
Hmm.
there.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, with flour, that's fucking everywhere, and it's 10 times cheaper
And that's why
Yeah.
you
on
have to
the
imagine
alternative market.
they might be, at least for now, they might be fine with the status quo just because they know business is gonna come in because they know that they need clean product.
Yeah.
At least on the base level, I think they're seeing that demand as we're fine. But I don't trust that because what happened I think with New York was when there was issues, those New Yorkers just came to New Jersey, right? And started buying weed here. And I'm wondering like when can there be a shift or like a when are we able to swap out who's in charge to the point where we're starting to open up the borders, and they start allowing bigger companies from outside to start putting their hands in the cookie jar in New Jersey. Like I don't know when it's gonna happen, but it feels
You
like
gotta
that's a
assume it's gonna
path.
happen though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know. Well, I guess they still pay taxes in New Jersey, right?
Could you
For
imagine
operating
the?
in.
I mean,
Yeah.
TJ,
So you get double
yeah.
taxed on that, right? Though, because you get taxed from the state you're selling in, and then where the money's going. No.
Well,
I think you're right.
I think the idea is depending on where you set up the business,
Mhm.
obviously, then you have to pay taxes there. But then you, as an employee of your own business, you're going to take income, and then you have to take income, I think, still from the business's tax state. I don't think it's where you
Mm.
live. That's interesting. Maybe it is where you live's tax
I th
state.
I uh, I think your income tax would be where you live, and
That
then the
would suck.
businesses.
Imagine
I
like you're
think
working
uh,
in New York and you live in New Jersey, and then
mm,
just like the taxes in New York apply to you. You're fucked. It's over for you.
yeah.
You'd have to pay New York taxes. Goddamn.
Um. Yeah.
But yeah,
Um.
I mean, we talked a lot on this, but we covered so much stuff. This was like a treasure trove for people. So I mean, Ethan, we definitely we want to close this out with letting people know about your podcast and when and where to find it. You want to take it from here?
Yeah, I have a podcast with my girlfriend. It's called "Don't Leave the House" with Ethan and Maria. It's just conversations like this. It's a little politics, some pop culture. We're putting together the first season right now. We're editing the first season. It's like 36 or 37 episodes. We're gonna drop that all at once. You can find us on YouTube, SoundCloud, or via podcast. And then after that, we will go on a regular schedule of releasing every once a week.
Wow, that's amazing. And so you've recorded all of it already, and you're ready to drop it, or how far are you?
Yeah, basically, we paused recording because we were recording like every time we hung out.
Yeah,
We put a pause on it just for us to start editing and catching up because it's daunting to have like 30 episodes to edit, you know?
that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's
But we're
amazing.
planning on dropping all that as yeah, dropping it on one season and then going on a weekly basis from there, having a cycle. So
You got to
please
give
stay
us a
tuned for
link.
that.
We'll put it in this description. That's crazy. I love that.
Oh,
Nice.
sure. Yeah.
Nice. All right. So if you've
I had a lot
listened,
of fun. This was a good podcast.
nice,
It was nice
nice.
having you.
If you've listened this far, you guys are a real one. You know, leave a like and subscribe. Let us know if you have any complaints about the cannabis industry, both in New Jersey and out. You know, we're open. Leave a comment for that. Hit the notification bell, and happy bacon. Thanks, Ethan. Thanks, TJ.
Good night, guys.
Thank you.
Peace.